Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and the show is Everything Co-op. We're bringing cooperative economics to everyday people. And today, we are discussing the Social Economy Roadshow to New York City and Boston, which is going to take place May the 25th through the 31st. This initiative is sponsored by the American Sustainable Business Network and introduces the Arita Social Economy Think Tank in collaboration with Humanity at Work and Life. Today's guests are Christina Clamp and Rodrigo Bacus. Thank you guys for joining me. So let's get started by just asking you, for our listeners hearing this for the first time, what is the Social Economy Roadshow and why is this initiative important right now? Christina, can you start?
Yeah, so I'm happy to share this information. So I have been involved with a group of industrial worker cooperatives going back to 1982 in Spain in the Basque region and developed relationships over the years. And they had in January last year rolled out a new ASETT or Arizmendi Arieta Think and Do tank focused on the social economy. And they have had a relationship with me and my colleague Michael Peck around a 2-volume series of books called Humanity at Work and Life, which has become an important first project for ASETT. And therefore, they wanted to come to the States in part to promote and support the books as a knowledge base around the social economy, and secondly, to establish and grow their networks in support of international connections around the social economy, cooperatives, and creating better activities in support of growing greater equality and inclusiveness in local communities. And so the trip to New York and to Boston is a chance to begin to do that leading up to a conference that will be held in San Sebastian in November of this year. And so people involved with the roadshow will have an opportunity to then join them in San Sebastian to grow that international network. This is the first roadshow of what they hope will be at least 2 or 3 additional ones, including a trip hopefully to the Midwest in the United States, visiting groups like Co-op Cincy in Central Appalachia, and additional trip to Mexico where they've had a relationship over a number of years. So you're probably wondering what the social economy is, and I'm going to let Ricxu explain that one.
Ricxu, what is the social economy? And before that, Christine, since you teach this economy stuff, what is economy?
So I love to start it with something I learned as a grad student, which is if you break down the word economy to its roots, its Greek root is the household. And so I like to think of it in terms of what are the resources, the goods that come in to make a household healthy and work to the benefit of its members. And we can grow that from the household level to thinking about the community and to the larger society.
What are the goods and services that comes into the household that make it work? Or what households don't have goods and services coming into it and it doesn't work? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I grew up in a household where we borrowed from Peter to pay Paul, and there was more month than money, so the money wasn't coming in. So a lot of us, maybe 50% of the U.S. live in that space. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was my childhood experience too.
And Bocus, what is social economy?
So social economy is an older term, and in the U.S., maybe some folks know it as solidarity economy, but they're essentially the same term. And a big part of economy is really about relationships, and we see that our current economy is really an exploitative, extractive, oppressive economy where things are very unequal. So the idea behind the social economy or solidarity economy is this vision that we are going to build that economy that is not that. It is instead collaborative, cooperative. It seeks justice. It seeks to replenish the environment and sustain it, as well as to build structures that are democratic and, and directly address those marginalized in our society.
Okay, so Christina and I said we grew up in that marginalized economy. So this whole social economy is to help folks that are in that today so that they can get out of that. But growing up in Bluefield, West Virginia, it was an extractive economy. It was coal mining and timber. So it was taking out from the planet coal, timber, and most often leaving the mountains bare and the water polluted. And then too often the people lost their pensions because of extraction. People just took it. And they were left broken people, broken land, broken economy, broken environment. Okay, so that we see that a lot in the U.S. That's extractive economy. Got it. So I wanted to make sure our listeners understand the difference between social economy and capitalism. Capitalism is that extractive economy. So, Christina, what inspired the creation of the Social Economy Roadshow, and what I assume you're trying to fill this gap between this extractive or eliminate the extractive economy and bring in more of the social economy?
Yeah, so Michael Peck, who has worked with me in the Humanity at Work and Life project, developed some interesting case numbers about economic justice and economic development. The European social economy represents 8% of the European Union's GDP, with 912 billion euros annually. The Spanish social economy is 10% of its national GDP. And when you look at some of the quality of life indicators, for example, in the US, in corporate firms, there's often a ratio between highest and lowest paid that's over 300 to 1, whereas in the Mondragon cooperatives, it's 6 to 1. And when you compare life expectancy in the US, we typically have a gap of 3 years less than what you find in Europe. And so that's some of what inspires people, because we look around and we say, we're an advanced industrial nation, but our numbers typically are falling below those of many other advanced Western countries.
Well, I could argue
And
that.
at the same time, we look at places like Mexico and Chile under the Gini coefficients, and we see that they continue to make progress from year to year while we are losing ground. And so the challenge for us, and the thing that's so striking about my colleagues from ASETT, is they look at us and they say, the United States is still very important in the global economy. And we see that things have changed in the US in terms of where we can look for what Colin Powell would have referred to as points of light. And it's the solidarity economy that's shining brightly in terms of its efforts to address what's broken in our economy. And so my colleagues at ASETT are keen to support those efforts and to create networks that will be supportive of the work that we're doing and to encourage us to continue to move forward and not lose hope.
So let's talk about not losing hope, particularly when I want to go back to a stat that you used. In the U.S., the person at the highest or the people at the highest may be making 300 times more money than the person at the lowest. So if you say the lowest is the janitor, it could be somebody working in the kitchen or something, but whatever the lowest, let's say they're making $20,000 a year. And if they're a family of two making $20,000 each, that's four, so they're above the poverty line of 27, but if it's a family of one, they're below the poverty line. And I think the poverty line is too low, by the way. I think it's hard for anybody, family of four, to make $27,000 and live in the U.S., almost anywhere, urban, rural. But this 300 to 1, if they're making, the lowest is making 20,000, the highest making 6 million a year. That's what 300 times 20 turns out. So that's what you're talking about, just to make sure people understand that stat. But if in Europe or other countries it's 6 to 1, or in a cooperative, if somebody's making 20, then the highest is making 120,000. More likely, with this 6 to 1 kind of a event, the person that's making 20 may go up to 40, and the other person then has $240,000 if they had the same money. That means that everybody's boat rises, everybody, particularly at the bottom. They're lifting a boat. Okay. So, Christina, how does the work at Arizmendi, and I can't do his last name that well, so Arizmendi.
Arietta.
Arietta? Oh.
Arietta. I've had practice on that one.
Okay. Arizmendi Arietta Social Economy Think Tank connect with cooperative values and principles.
So, Arizmendi Arietta Social Economy Think Tank is part of the Mondragon Cooperative Group. So they are completely embedded within the Mondragon set of cooperative values and principles, and they have a strong commitment to supporting the work that the cooperatives continue to do to the benefit of their members. And with that, they've also established strong relationships with the Basque government, with the Catalan government. And I had the opportunity, I was at a social economy conference in Bordeaux in October, the GCEF conference, and the Minister for the Social Economy of Spain, talking about what's happening in Spain, highlighted the importance of ASETT as a model that the entire Spanish sovereign state sees as important to promoting the social economy in Spain as well as in Europe. So very much committed to values of transparency, of democracy, of creating fairness and benefit back to members in their community. And what I've observed in the Mondragon cooperatives, not just the industrial ones, but the ones that are involved in more nonprofit types of activities, is that they continue to use the same organizational form as the industrial cooperatives within those other groups. So the Mondragon University, for example, as well as ASETT, are committed to those same principles of cooperation.
So, Christina, you teach at the college level?
I did for 42 years at Southern New Hampshire University. I retired in 2023, but have continued to be very active in this work with the American Sustainable Business Council, with my involvement as board chair at the Local Enterprise Assistance Fund here in Boston. It's a community development finance institution. And just recently was conferred emeritus status at Southern New Hampshire University. So I think you'll see me doing some more work with them as well in the next year or two.
Congrats. The reason I ask you that is because I've taught 12 years, 11 of it at the college level. And I wonder what it would be like to teach in a college that was based on cooperative principles and values. Okay. Have you any sense of what that might look like?
Well, I had a chance to go and visit with a colleague at Mondragon University in their offices in Oñate, which is the next town over from Mondragon, a few years ago. And I was really struck by the fact that faculty were in shared space with their students. So they were in carrels rather than in closed-off offices. there was some real leveling that goes on in terms of the involvement and interaction that I was seeing. And it really struck me as, all right, this is one of those moments of walk the talk or talk the walk. And how do I feel about this and how would I work? Because my office was filled with books. And when I retired, I carried all those books home. Most of them, some of them went to the library. But it's a model of an open door approach to education, which I thought was a really good way of approaching those relationships.
So I would not have even thought about that one. When I taught, my office door stayed open, even if somebody was in it or not, so that I gave it an air that people could come in and talk to me. I was more thinking about the administrative level and how people got evaluated and all of those kinds of things. And universities, in my experience, are extremely political institutions, and a lot depends on who you know and all of those kinds of things. So being in a cooperative, I would expect it would be better level playing field. Any sense of that?
Oh, I think that, we're all humans at our core. And even in the most democratic of institution, you can run into, because of people's position, there can be cliques, there can be favoritism. Um, I gave a talk for a Catholic group a couple of years ago called the New York City Encounter, and I was asked the question about people's experience of work, and the assumption from the person was that everybody is so thrilled and happy and elated to be in a cooperative workplace, and how much better that is. But fundamentally, the day-to-day work is still work. And I pointed out to someone afterwards. Actually, I was talking with someone from who's now in the Basque government, Ana Aguirre, and she said people need to realize that whether you're in a co-op or a conventional workplace, the day-to-day work may not be that different. What's different is what's happening in terms of the power relationship and the profits.
Power relationship and profits.
Accountability back to members in a cooperative.
Okay, so Rodrigo, tell us about the New York City event at CUNY Law School. What can participants expect from that gathering?
Sure. And I also want to say CUNY Law actually partners with Montagon to work with
Yes.
several of their students that are in cooperatives. And so what Chris was saying was very accurate. And I think because the social economy is not it's not untied from the capitalist system, the pressures of production are still there, but the relationships are different. And that people's focus on what is the product is not what are we, the square that we're making, but rather how do we resolve the issues, the situation that our clients are facing. And that's very reflective of how students think whenever we work with them year to year. And just on the event on the 26th, it's really kind of trying to bring together a larger discussion on that. Because, the cooperative students from Montagon, the CUNY Law students, when they come together, it's really thinking about how do we build the social economy from this microcosm classroom situation to how it actually affects, the world and our country and our nation. And so our focus in this event is to bring together different people from different parts of life, different people who are connected to the cooperative economy, to the solidarity social economy, and to talk about issues that are pertinent to what's happening right now and looking at resolutions for them and how people can partner, collaborate, work together better, and particularly also highlighting or giving inspiration to folks who are in the social economy by highlighting the work of ASETT, of Mondragon, and the history that it's come from that Chris was referring to, where it was able to form a strong base and succeed in spite of challenges directly coming from the society that it was created in.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought CUNY Law in, that they are sponsoring this also. And so is that where you work? Are you a lawyer?
Oh, that's right. So I'm a senior attorney in law
Come
school
on,
here
come
in
on,
Manila.
Roger. You're not that old, so I don't know about senior. Okay, that doesn't fit.
Oh, I mean, not that kind of senior.
Okay.
I'm attorney at the clinic, and we do that clinic is very focused on a regenerative, restorative social economy, working with marginalized groups. And so we have been partnering with Mondragon for some time actually, since the clinic started.
Okay. Okay. And so where are you from? Where are you
I,
from?
I'm I'm from the Philippines. I was born there. I migrated. I've been a New Yorker too because I've migrated to New York in 2002. It's been a while. Um, but the situations that you described in your childhood is very much also present in the Philippines. An economy of extraction. I grew up in an urban poor community. When I was younger, the goal in my life was potentially to work in a factory at Nike because they paid good wages. And not knowing that good wages to us means that we're producing, a $100 shoe and they're paying us 2 cents. Nobody tells us that. So that's the kind of background I've come in. And so I'm happy that I've become a lawyer, that I work in the social economy and inspire others really to think of a different economy, of a better one than what we have now.
Okay. And Carmen, what role do workers, communities, and grassroots organizations play in transforming the economy from the bottom up?
In New York City in particular, and Chris, I would like to invite you to talk about Boston too. In New York City and this area in general, and in particular, grassroots organizations and movements are really key in terms of building social economy. So as we said before, social economy is about collaboration, cooperation, and bringing society towards justice. The only way that we can really identify what justice means is the struggle, experimentation, and movements on the ground that try to figure out what that means. Right. So, for example, we in CUNY Law and in our cooperative spaces in New York, we align with movements for immigrants' rights, for workers' rights, movements for racial justice and decarceration. All of those movements, the question in every single one of those spaces is, I know that I'm in a situation of injustice. How do I work with myself and collaborate with other people to figure out what that justice looks like and reduce the economy from there, right? What kind of relationships do we build? What kind of networks do we build? What kind of things do we build that actually gear towards justice and not gear towards extraction or having 1% of people holding all of the wealth?
I
That's a
like the
very
way
key thing.
I like the way you said that. It made it clear for me. Okay. Christina, the New York gathering is described as interactive and focused on sharing ideas and identifying opportunities for collaboration, what Rodrigo just talked about. Why is participation and dialogue so important in this work?
Well, I have a good friend who's heads up a foundation called Haymarket, Carla Nicholson, and Carla's a good friend that I get together once a year down in Florida when it's too cold to be in Boston. And Carla and I were talking about the fact that growing out of the chapter one in Humanity at Work and Life, Inigo Albasori wrote this wonderful piece about the cooperative ecosystem of the Mondragon cooperatives. And then I had a student from St. Mary's that I supervised on his capstone paper, and I asked him to look at the cooperative ecosystem for worker co-op development in the United States. And so the challenge that I see is that compared to what it was when I was a grad student back in 1982, we have so many more folks trying to do this work, but they run into the same issue of being siloed. And so you could have, just in the Boston area, 3, 4, 5 groups that are all trying to do co-op development, but they go about their day-to-day activity, and there isn't the kind of cross hybridization, cooperation and collaboration to bring about change that I think we need. And so one of the things, my personal goal out of this, is that through the discussion at CUNY Law School, because we've focused on it being not just talking heads, but rather to really jump into interactive discussions around specific themes, both there and also in the Boston public event, that we can get people seeing ways that they can work together. And I think that's just critical to making the movement stronger.
Sounds like you're talking about P6, principle of cooperation among cooperatives, or cooperation among people that are creating cooperatives. This network, and Rodrigo had talked about that, is the relationships and building those relationships and building this system. Okay, so what are some examples of successful collaborations or partnership that demonstrate what the social economy can achieve?
Ricxu, do you want to?
Sure. As I say, I'll let you start. But I can show you some examples in New York. So what's unique about New York City is that it was one of the first places in which movements were able to win explicit funding for cooperatives on a municipal level. And that has resulted that in the last 10 years of cooperative development in New York has become essentially a hub of worker cooperatives, but also cooperatives in general and other types of structures in the social economy. And not only that, not only does it have the highest concentration, one of the highest concentrations of cooperatives, and the largest one actually, CHCA. It's also a community of worker owners that are very much reflective of New York City. Women, but Black, Indigenous people of color, immigrants, and workers compose more than a majority of the worker owners in New York City. And that's just from, number one, having a grassroots movement that pushes our government to be accountable, and number two, using that win to create.
We're going to come back. We're going to break. Everybody, please don't touch that dial. Welcome back, everybody. This is Everything Co-op. I'm Vernon Oaks, and Christina Clamp and Rodrigo Bacus is with me today. We're talking about a road show between New York and Boston that's talking about this social economy. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been on air 13 years now, talking about social economy and co-ops. National Co-op Bank has been our main financial sponsor and cheerleader all of these years. NCB's goal is to support co-ops and their members by providing innovative financial services, particularly for low-income communities. So that's what we all have said we've grown up in, our low-income communities, and that's what they're about, trying to figure out how to find financial instruments to help, because funding co-ops are difficult in that often people don't have a lot of collateral, and banks look for people that have buildings and assets and money. So when they loan money, they know they can get that money back. They can go to someplace else to get the money if the business doesn't work or fails. And so it makes it difficult to get loans, and they like for somebody to sign and pledge their assets. And so when you have a group of people come together that's putting their nickels and dimes and maybe dollars together today, it gets hard to get those loans. And so NCB was created to find innovative ways of doing that, and they've done it quite well. Have you guys had an opportunity to work with NCB? Go ahead, Christina.
Well, yes, I have in my capacity on the board of the Local Enterprise Assistance Fund, and LEAF has had a long-term relationship with NCB. And currently, Gerardo Espinosa, who's the executive director of LEAF, serves on the board of NCB as well. And the point that you're making about personal guarantees is a real challenge, I think, in funding for cooperatives. It's certainly, for the 9 years I was on the board of the Food Co-op Initiative, I saw this over and over again, that food co-ops have really found that they couldn't get financing in places where they required a personal guarantee. So groups like LEAF and Shared Capital and the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast have been really important because of their willingness to work around those challenges.
Well, I'm glad you brought in LEAF, Shared Capital, Food Co-op Initiative, Cooperative Fund of the Northeast. Those are all great names that are working in this ecosystem to help get funding, because that turns out to be critical when you're trying to start and or grow a business. Is where does the money come from? How do you get that in there? Okay, so before we took break, Rodrigo, you were giving us some examples of successful collaborations and partnerships in the social economy. Would you keep that conversation going? What was the one you were talking about?
I was talking about the development of a worker cooperative business
Right.
development initiative in New York City that has now been running for 10 years. It was pushed for by an active movement of folks who wanted to see, the social economy, an alternative economy to capitalism. And now, because of the existence of that fund, New York City has had one of the highest concentrations of worker cooperatives, and the worker owners in those cooperatives truly reflect, New York City as a community, right, with women, Black, Indigenous, people of color, immigrants, and workers. And even to this day, those kinds of innovations continue to move forward. Oh, and I also mentioned that New York has the largest cooperative, the Community Home Care Associates, or CA. And New York continues to try to innovate because, for example, one of the justice aspects that are coming up recently, especially because of the rise of xenophobia and kind of a militarized version of that, is this idea of not just access to spaces and to spaces and places, but also access in terms of process, access to language, access to the ability to be able to be in that space and participate. And actually, there's been a great development here in New York about looking at being able to see something like the language diversity of some place like Queens, which is one of the most diverse language areas in the U.S., and then turn that into something productive, but not productive for a few people to gain wealth, but productive so that access to spaces is increased. And that not only do you give access to spaces through language access, but the folks who become interpreters are worker owners, and so they are also getting a share of that production, right? And so that's really something that we're excited to see, especially this year and last year, in response to some of the things that have been going on in our country that have been really upsetting.
So you take me back. I taught 1 year at York College, part of CUNY in Jamaica, Queens. And yes, we had all kinds of languages in the classroom back in 69, 70 school year before you were born, Rodrigo. Okay. You're not going to go back to But I just want to give a quick definition of cooperatives. Cooperatives are built by people for the benefit of people. And worker co-ops are when the people that work in that business own the business. They control the business. They control the profits. They have voice. And the voice is the biggest thing I like about co-ops, to give people dignity, self-worth. So not only financial worth, but self-worth, which is, for me, as big as, if not more important than the financial wealth. Okay, so that's a worker cooperative, and they work. But I'd like to give a shout out to Leaf. Are you still on their board, Christina?
I am. I'm the board chair. I serve at the pleasure of the members, who are the staff of LEAF, which is also a worker cooperative. I was talking with another cooperator who I think you know well, Vernon, Terry Lewis, last night, because she'll be coming in to Boston for the events here. She serves on the LEAF board, and we were talking about how fortunate we feel to be able to serve such a great organization. And so she said the main thing she wanted, besides being part of the visit, the public events here, is to also go by the LEAF offices, which are here in my neighborhood of Brighton, and to get to know all the staff there as well.
Okay, I just had a meeting with Alice and Jose Luis from LEAF.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic folk. I don't know if you know it, but I'm the general manager of Colluminate now for the last year and a half.
Congratulations. I think I did hear that.
Congratulations or condolences, both work from different times. Different time. But it is a co-op of consultants, and they're more like professors. They're very intelligent, highly motivated, and they all have their view, which is also very interesting to figure out how to manage and work with. And we have a property management business, and we do financial services now for food co-ops. So I get an opportunity to work with Leaf in a lot of ways. Yeah. And Christina at Shared Capital. Christina Jennings, your first name.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about this social economy and how it affects everyday people. So, Christina, let's start with you. How does the social economy improve the quality of life for ordinary working people?
Well, I think it really depends on, and this is something I was fortunate 9 years. I was on the board of NCBA, and I got to see different cooperative sectors at play. And, you know, I 42 years I was working in New Hampshire, where 85,000 households are able to benefit from the rural electric cooperative. We have a food cooperative in Concord, another one in Littleton, and another one that's you might say the grandparent of the group in Hanover. The food co-op in Hanover started out of the Great Depression, and over the years has been really helpful to the other efforts to start cooperatives in the state. So when we talk about the solidarity economy, it's looking at ways in which there is a need for people to come together, to work collaboratively, to work cooperatively, to make a difference. One of the past managers at Hanover, when he came on board there, you'll remember Terry Appleby, Vernon.
Oh, yeah.
And Terry told the story about when he first got hired. The farmers, it was harvest season, and they dumped a bunch of pumpkins in the parking lot. And he realized there was no coordination with the local farming community around what they were harvesting so that they could benefit from higher prices for their product. And so he brought the farmers together to get them talking to each other to come up with a better system so that the food cooperative could then better serve their need to be an outlet for local produce. So when I think about the solidarity economy, it's about looking for the ways that we can do better through mutual approaches rather than looking to the government to solve things, because governments, we fall in and out of favor with them over time. And I think the best solution is one where we're not dependent on the ins and outs of government whims. I think we need to do things in a way that serves our interests best and grow our ability to better serve ourselves through that collaborative effort.
Cooperatives are people helping people to help themselves. People helping people to help themselves. So, Rodrigo, what would you say to someone who believes cooperative economics or solidarity economies are unrealistic or too small to make a difference?
There's a lot I could say, actually. One is that there have been plenty of historical examples in which cooperative economies, the solidarity economy, has been in fact successful. In fact, that's for somebody like that. Let's start with come to this May 26th event, because
Okay.
you will see very clearly the history of Mondragon and how it was able to succeed despite the challenges, despite the opposition, actually, to its formation and to the society that it was connected to. And that example is one example. We see the same here in New York City. I wanted to shout out the developers of this language access initiative that I was talking about earlier, Al Garabia Language Co-op and Sunlight Collective. They have been able to really meet with community regularly, in spite of things like scheduling issues. Maybe there's democracy, so decision-making issues. All of those challenges present themselves, but that does not mean that the success doesn't come, right? So that's the first thing that I would say, is that there's been plenty of examples showing exactly the opposite. The second thing is that, of course, we have to be realistic. In the solidarity economy, in cooperatives, we're still gonna have us. We're not perfect. we're going to have conflicts. We're going to have differences in opinion. We're going to have differences in position or situation. But what's interesting about cooperatives in the solidarity economy is that that becomes the center of conversation. You know, the center of conversation is not who amongst all of us can make the most money or can hoard the most wealth. It becomes actually, yes, this person who is in a different situation, maybe we should find a way to retool our cooperative so that it includes that person better. And so, yeah, in some ways, maybe people might view that, if you're used to capitalism, you might view that as a negative, right? You're like, wow, so it feels like so much talking and conversation. But it's actually that democratic component that partly ensures that the solidarity economy is focused on justice and cooperation.
So I would just like to add something to that. It wasn't called cooperative or solidarity economy at the beginning of time, at the beginning of humanity.
Right.
But folks had to work together in order to survive. Whether you're in the Sahara Desert fighting the saber-toothed tiger, or you're in the cold, in the caves, in the ice age, if you didn't work together, you would not survive. So for me, cooperation has been here since the beginning of time, and we just need to get back to it because there's all of these different values and things that we can get out of it by helping each other. And the fifth principle of cooperation is education, training, and information. So when there's conflict, you have to learn how to manage that conflict. So you can look for what's the best solution, not my way or your way, but what's the best way. I like the way that came out. Okay. Christina, what role does education and storytelling play in helping people understand alternatives to traditional capitalism? Where does education play?
Well, I think that just as I told you the story of Terry Appleby and the pumpkins, I think that the stories are ways of creating access for people who are questioning the feasibility of an alternative economic model. And I'm often have shared the story of years ago I hosted a Eastern Conference for Workplace Democracy at Southern New Hampshire University. This was in 2005. And a reporter asked me, was this some sort of socialist something? And I said to him, do you, sir, realize what the first cooperative in the United States was? I said, it was started by Ben Franklin. It was a mutual
Mutual,
fire insurance
mutual
cooperative.
insurance,
And
mutual insurance.
so the point is that we have to be practical in our approach. We have to do rather than just sit and think and twiddle our thumbs about the problems. We have to look for the ways that we can make a difference on a day-to-day basis, and we do it best by working together.
So working together, Rodrigo, how do issues like housing, worker ownership, food systems, climate justice, and racial equality, equity connect to the social economy?
I mean, it's very connected. Number one, because, when we think of social economy and we're talking about worker cooperatives, in them are people. And our communities face these situations day to day, right? Situations of communities are impacted by racial justice issues, by the environment, all of these different things. And so we don't build the cooperative based on what kind of business they want. We build the cooperative based on who the people are and what situation they're trying to address, and how to best use cooperation and collaboration to get out of that situation and actually be more productive and be contributive to society. So and so not only that, the cooperatives themselves are also very much, there's a principle on helping the community, where cooperatives themselves, not only when they start to be successful in businesses and they can say, hey, I found my dignity, my rate of pay is better, my working conditions are better, but beyond that, cooperatives then also think, okay, I am in that situation, but society still faces these problems. How can we contribute as a cooperative in order to address those problems? So in a way, it actually ties all throughout, the beginning, the end, the continued existence of cooperatives, the issues that we face as people is also the situations that cooperatives address and face because it is composed of the very same people.
Fantastic. Thank you. Christina, let's go to look at the future a minute. How can younger people and emerging leaders become involved in the social and solidarity economy movement?
Well, sometimes it's as simple as showing up to a road trip event at CUNY Law School or coming to the Fiorentino Community Center here in Boston and joining us at a table, and Ricxu can enumerate the different types of tables and discussions that'll happen there. I learned a long time ago that sometimes it's just visiting a cooperative that opens one's eyes to the possibilities. And so, Ricxu, why don't you share with our audience some of the themes that we'll be taking up at these two public events?
And tell
Yeah,
us when
absolutely.
they're going to be. And tell us when
Yes.
they're going to be. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So our event is on May 26th here in CUNY Law. It's 2:30 to 5:30. I think it's great for any, and even if you're curious, you're like, I have no idea about cooperatives, but you want to be part of this social economy. You want to be part of a justice building economy. And our themes are related towards being able to think about that both in an inspirational and historical way, as well as how to do that in the present. So, for example, we talked a lot about the legacy of Arizmendi Arrieta and Mondragon. So, one of the themes that we're going to be talking about is that, and actually the 50th anniversary of Arismendi is actually around this time. So we are going to talk about that in terms of context and inspiration, but not just to say, oh, this was successful at the time, but how can that kind of collaboration and success continue to this time? We also want to talk about ASETT and humanity at work and life. ASETT is the think tank, right, that we were talking about earlier, and that's the way that we are doing this actually is before I get to the rest of the themes is that we are going to have some speakers such as Jamaal Bailey talk at the beginning, give context and framework, introduce themselves, but we want this discussion to be truly collaborative, and so we're actually doing it kind of a gallery walk table by table style where people go to different tables and talk about the themes that are pertinent to that table. We'll have experts there who can help give context and answer questions, but really it's about the people in that space contributing to the discussion, contributing to the ideas. And that's why I was talking about themes, right? First, that is the ASETT, then humanity at work and life. And the idea is you can switch around tables, right? So you're not going to be stuck on one table, but you can learn from all the subject matter experts, learn from the group around you and the people that are part of the discussion. Our third one is actually
What
about the
can,
EU social economy.
can I add
And
something?
we link that to the local economy here for particularly in CUNY Law, the local economy in New York City, right? Trying to look at the different ways and the ways in which those economies work and how we can extract lessons from those things. We also talk about voice and ownership, right? The key part of cooperatives is democracy at work. So we want that to be something that folks can ask questions about, understand better through experience, but also think about ways in which we can continue to build that kind of model. And finally, the table that the last table, or it's a circle, so it's not really the last. The table that I'm talking about last, is the table on how emergent technologies can support the social economy, right? So there are many emerging technologies actually that are happening now, and there is a big debate about how those emerging technologies could potentially be extractive. But we've seen in several examples that we can do something else. We can make the choice to not have technologies be extractive. We can make the choice for cooperatives to take the lead on technology and build a justice-oriented economy.
So how can somebody find out about this road show? Who can they contact?
I
So,
would, oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
go ahead. Talk.
I was going to say one of the main things that we have, if you are chronically online person, which I think a lot of people like me are, is we have an Eventbrite. So that's a place where we would like folks to register, and then you will be able to get more details about the event. So it should be eventbrite.com slash sorry, Chris. It's slash the
Yeah,
we'll come back to it. So there's
Okay.
an Eventbrite. You can also go to this NCB website. They also have the event featured
NCBA,
there,
yeah.
and they also have the link to the Eventbrite. So I would encourage people to check it out there. And a third place is actually if you are in the Boston and New York area or around there. We are also outreaching locally to folks who are cooperators, academics, and folks in the area to be able to also give them information. But if in case you're not in that, the online component is probably the most accessible. And we'll get back to you about the Eventbrite link.
Yeah, if
Okay.
you reach to the general information link for the local enterprise assistance fund, they'll be able to pick it up for the Boston area and direct you to the Eventbrite link as well. So in Boston, there'll be some differences from the New York event, because in New York, in addition to two leaders from ASETT and a young woman from the Mondragon Team Academy Traveling University program, we also will have Ichang Yi from the UN Research and Social Development, who I've been working with on the Own the Metrics campaign, looking at the Sustainable Development Goals and how to make effective use of those metrics within the social economy. And one of our newest outcomes with that is the Vienna Stock Exchange is now using the Sustainable Development Performance Indicators in their reporting. And also, we will have Goran Deris, who's with Ethical Banking. He's based in Croatia, and he'll be joining us for the New York event. In Boston, those two gentlemen won't be able to join us because they'll be involved with a conference at the UN that same week. But in Boston, we'll be joined by Steve Dove, who some folks in the co-op community may know, and Terry Lewis will also be joining us.
And I will not be joining you because I have another event, but I would like to find out when the one is going to be in Appalachia, since the Ohio and
Well,
Appalachia.
Vernon, we may have some work for you there.
Okay. Okay. Now, we only have a few more minutes left, one or two, but I really need to find out how people can go online and find you. I went to ncb.coop and it didn't pop out right away. So how can...
National Corporate Business Association has it on their front page right now.
Who does?
National Cooperative Business Association.
So ncba.coop. You can go there. ncba.coop, and it's on their front page. NCB has it on theirs. That's ncb.coop, but I couldn't find it right away.
So the link for the Boston events on Eventbrite is https://
Too much.
asset,
Too much.
too much,
Too much.
but it's asset-boston.eventbrite.com.
Yeah. Okay. So, Christina, what message would you like to leave people with?
Well, first of all, for anyone who's new to this is a great opportunity to come in. You don't have to be an advanced expert on the solidarity economy. Come join us, bring your ideas, your challenges, and be part of the conversation. And for anyone who's always thought, gee, I would love to go visit the Mondragon cooperatives, but I don't see how I'm going to get there, here's a chance to meet a couple of people from those cooperatives who are happy to engage in a discussion with all of you. So if you can be in New York or Boston, New York will be on May 26th. The public events in Boston will be a reception Thursday night at the SEIU 32 BJ's Union Hall, 26 West Avenue, or West Street, I should say, in downtown.
Thank you very
And
much.
then the afternoon.
Everybody out there, we'll see you next Thursday. Please live cooperatively.